bueno maldito me la va a deber. Porque yo soy indio, no debo de saberlo. Pasa allá mi tierra, no debe de suceder. Milicia del masacre, es injusto que no ven.
Yeah!
Oh, yeah! Ow! Oh, no.
Hello?
We gotta... Go ahead.
Hello and welcome to It's Happenin show, community grassroots media for the people by the people. Jose Gloria.
And I'm Dylan Thompson. We are your host tonight.
Tonight, indeed.
Indeedly do.
It's Happenin is a movement of the heart and of the mind. It's the energy of the universe that creates waves inside us and all around us, which allows us to activate, motivate, then elevate vibrationally and intellectually towards love, truth, justice, and wisdom. It's happening in every which way.
It's Happenin is a culture of empowerment. It's people having the right to exist and participate as equals. It's a dream of what the world could be, but the future we want is only possible if we make it happen. So stand up, get informed, and fight back.
Fight back.
Fight back.
Fight back. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us, so we thank you because of you. It's happening. Yeah, just leave the It's Happening to me until we're in studio.
That'll be yeah, that's the new policy.
That's
the only way I'm getting that in sync here. So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. How you doing, bub?
Man, I'm totally ready for the show today. Like the way I missed that It's Happening, it was planned. It was only for the benefit of the audience. So how about you?
We're doing good. Yeah, just went through a lot of stuff emotionally with the Sopranos, that series that I finally finished.
Oh man,
that was heavy. Got to do just a Sopranos show to talk about how how politics is like the mafia.
Yeah, that's great.
They whack people left and right.
Wait, when did they finish that as a show again? I love that we would have a special episode on it, like a decade later.
Yeah, it's been like 12 years or something crazy. Still popular.
All right, you organize it, man. You put the panel together, and I'll start watching.
Yeah, all I know is that now I want to buy a gun because we can't. You never know, man. You can't. And you got to build coalitions with cholos, So we're ready. Come with me. It's coalition building. What I learned in nonprofits. Yeah, man.
Put to practical use.
But Memorial Day is upon us. So
yeah, that's something.
And yeah, so this weekend was the first weekend, I believe, in a lot of places where people are finally coming out and going out and
right.
Not practicing social distancing, especially in Newport and Huntington Beach.
Well, reduced social distancing, let's put it that way. In some places, right? Aren't restaurants allowed to have people like open patios, right? And so I don't know. I haven't gone downtown. I'm not that interested yet. I mean, I don't know about you.
No, I'm scared.
Yeah, still on the cautious side here, but
yeah,
we'll see how that goes. I mean, I imagine this is kind of like a feedback loop. You know how this works. Like as we open up more, there'll be more exposures. We should curtail it, and then vice versa. Then there'll be fewer cases. People want to come out. So hopefully this can be a graceful thing, and not too many people are endangered by it. But let's see what happens, right?
We'll see what happens. Ben says that you need a sun reflection mirror.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. I appreciate your constant critique of my lack of vitamin D. So I really should get outside. So
seriously, man, maybe it'll give you some more energy before the show.
Lord.
Speaking of energy, POA won big in Santa Ana, so they are feeling high and mighty right now. They not only did they recall Ceci Iglesias in the last week's election, a special election here, but they also got the POA leaning candidate Nelly da Mendoza to win. Or I don't know if they got, but she won, and now based on her conversations on Manny Escamilla's show and on his podcast and in other places, it's very easy to say that POA won big, but hey, if you spend $400,000 on a campaign, then yeah, you should win.
You should.
You
Yeah.
should.
That's in the Bible, I believe, as a moral pronouncement. Yeah, I mean, it's sad to see this happen. I mean, obviously, I was against the recall, but it is fascinating to see the Nalita pull out the victory here over Ty. Not sure how to explain that. I mean, Nalita's been around. She's run a lot, so I mean, this was her time, and we'll see what happens. But definitely, this was the worst outcome imaginable. Maybe it depends on your perspective, but as far as opposing the POA, this is not the good outcome here.
Yeah, so we'll see. That definitely gives them wind behind their sails in their effort to turn old council majority in favor of them and all of their selfish endeavors. So
yeah, I mean, to me, they gained both of their objectives here, which was to make an example out of someone. I mean, multiple, even more than that. They made an example out of a council person. Like, you oppose us, look what we can do. We'll make your life hell and we'll kick you out of office. 2, they got someone who's probably the most sympathetic person to them got into the office, right? And then 3, they removed someone against them, right? So it's a lot of wins here for the POA.
Yeah.
Let's see if that trend ever changes.
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, we'll take the L, lick our wounds. Ty, has a future ahead of her. We'll see. She is first time running Asian, candidate, in a city that's full of Latino council members and 80% Latino. It's still, to be seen how she can do in a district election. So yeah, that'll be coming up soon. So.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. So, and then last quick story is that Trump says that churches are essential businesses, but not essential for him because he chose to go golfing on Sunday instead of attending mass.
Yeah, even within the realm of essential, some things are more essential than others, right? So, I guess golf wins out in Trump's view.
Golfing is like my temple. I love it. It's great. I wasn't saying me. I was saying other people. It's essential for them, not me. I need my golf clubs.
Yeah, I mean, things are so ridiculous. It's not so far to say that he'll just turn his resort into a church, and that will be a form of worship. Tax exempt, by the way.
Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, Put it. Yeah, the only thing he needs is a Trump church, right?
Yeah.
Trump towers, Trump casinos, Trump steaks.
Yeah, we haven't hit the edge of absurdity yet. So, I mean, let's just keep following this trend. See where it takes us. Speaking of weird trends. Time for headlines.
Dylan Thompson.
The latest stories affecting you. Brought to you by some kind of toothpaste. Okay, sorry. We should start doing sponsorships. Okay, so trends. What's going on with our apocalypse, man? That's still going. There's some good, there's some bad, right? But there's a ruling coming out of I think it's either Switzerland or Switzerland that will probably affect the way companies have to compensate their workers. It says that basically if you're going to be forced to live at home, they're going to have to pay for some of that, the space you use as an office at home. And this really I don't know, this came to my attention as I was thinking about it. I was like, as summer sets in, and say we are not going back to the office, everyone's going to be at home, right? And they're going to start running their ACs. And I mean, that is one of the benefits of an office, right? It's a shared space that there's one cooling unit that serves a lot of people. It's pretty efficient energy wise, right? But now you've distributed your workforce. They have to start using their own amenities and energy and also utilities that used to be provided by the company as a benefit, right? So how do you do the math on that? Like, are there lawyers looking at this? Like, it's interesting. So I'm expecting these rulings to mainly happen in Europe, but I mean, there should be some here. And I even imagine, like, these co-working spaces, Jose.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine these are going to be even more prevalent in the future as people that have to work from home, maybe like decide like maybe I don't want to be around my kids all the time, or like I need to get out of here. They'll go rent a space over there. They'll get the AC, they'll get the snacks, they'll get whatever. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see as the landscape.
Yeah, I mean, but then there's always Starbucks, but you might have to fight for spots.
Yeah, definitely. These are going to be even more useful or valuable real estate. A chair at Starbucks, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Right. And a few more quick updates. Apparently, the CDC is warning people of aggressive cannibal rats. Okay, so this kind of goes under the whole like, isn't it enough already category. It's kind of like we had the murder hornets. Like, what other plagues are going to befall humanity at this time?
I mean, rats have always eaten people, though.
Yeah, I think so. I think when push it comes to shove, they'll take a chunk out of you if they have to. So look forward to that. If you were already scared of rats, you have even more reason to be. I think especially if you're in New York or New Orleans and other urban areas, right? So
yeah, man, you've seen that video with that rat in New York with like dragging that big old slice of New York pizza. Things are ruthless. I mean, I tell people stories about how in Mexico, like big like rabbit-sized rats would come out of like the pipes or in from like into like the toilet and out. Imagine that, like going to the John, all of a sudden you hear like
right.
And it's like little thing like
oh man, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, haven't we had enough?
I know.
Seriously.
I'm out.
And closing out our apocalypse update, pool parties have never been more controversial, Jose, and important in the the discourse of our society. But yeah, if you look at some of the top news stuff, a lot of them appear to be relating to people receiving criticism for their pool party on social media. So this is very newsworthy stuff. I mean, I think it's going to be hard for people come Thanksgiving and stuff when the awkward topic of pool parties comes up, and it's just like you kind of have to, lay your claim, right? And could disrupt a family get-together. So
you did what? With who?
What?
How many?
How many beach balls were there? Like, yeah.
Chlorine kills it. And I drank some chlorine water just in case.
Yeah, Trump said that, right? I believe our president recommended this kind of intake. So
there's all sorts of parties. Like, I'm like jealous. All my neighbors are like going to town. Like, I have parties and backyard little get-togethers.
What? Hey, okay, this is kind of off topic. This is on subject but unplanned. I did see something the other day, like, and maybe you've seen it too, but there's a lot of people honking their horns. I kind of come outside and like see what's going on, and it's apparently it's someone's birthday. So instead of having a party, everyone just drives by and honks. And we were sitting there like, huh, that's cool. Oh, they have a lot of friends. Damn. And one of the neighbors was explaining to their neighbor, like, yeah, no, it's a drive-by birthday. And I'm like, only in COVID times are drive-bys like a celebrated thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We're reclaiming drive-bys in the COVID time. So that's the other positive side of the apocalypse update.
Yeah, no, I've seen like drive-by birthdays. I saw drive-by baby shower today.
Yeah.
Friend of the show, Al Jabbar.
There you go.
Having a little one. So yeah, that was cute.
Yeah. Look out for new traffic rules on cruising.
Oh yeah, they shut down Bristol like yesterday, I think. Like, because they didn't want to do that, us to do that. It's like, man, come on.
Man, this all
cruising should be let back in. Like, it's just that's so
for real.
friendly. Come on.
Yeah, especially baby shower cruising, like all these like soccer moms in minivans, like going like, like
All these lowriders like going like. All right, that's enough of the apocalypse update.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The new segment we're bringing on Becky's Corner. Becky's Corner.
Becky's Corner.
Also known as Karen. Corner too. So we've had a couple of instances, unfortunately.
Oh boy.
Where we've the Beckys have struck again. So there was a couple that came up. One was that this woman who was obviously intoxicated was saying, "Play America," as she berates Hispanic family for playing Mexican music in a public park. So, so this was an angry white woman caught on video berating a Hispanic family, which, as it turns out, are Puerto Rican because hashtag not all Mexicans
are Puerto Rican.
Are not all Hispanics are Mexicans.
There you go.
Or that,
yeah. Maybe they apply. Yeah. I thought everyone's supposed to be inside, Jose. What happened to that? Are parks open still? Because last I saw, it was at one of the lifted restrictions of late.
I think in some states, in some places, they are letting people go, like and picnic, but as long as they practice social distancing. But yeah, she said, "You are so fucking disrespectful. Fuck all this. Fuck this music. It sucks. You're in America." And then somebody said, "We have as much right to be in America as you do. Then play American music." So that was a doozy. Y'all can watch. We could drop the video on there for y'all to watch later, but it's all sorts
Becky Corner.
Becky Corner. And the other story in the Becky Corner was a woman was caught on video calling the police and claiming that there was an African American threatening her life after he reportedly told her to put her dog on a leash. So yet again, the wackiness does not stop. And this is really unfortunate because the cops show up, like, you never know what could happen. Stop calling the police on people of color, for Christ's sake. So it was NYPD officers were called to Central Park after a man and a woman got into an argument over a dog apparently being off the leash. Melody Cooper, a science fiction and horror screenwriter, posted a video of the incident to Twitter. So that happened. And that happened.
You are a Becky.
Yeah. And like there was a lot of sad parts about it, but the one sad part is like you could tell like the dog was obviously like rabid or like not very well trained. So probably part of the reason why he told her to put the dog on a leash, because the dog was like thrashing around and she was like carrying it by the leash, and like the poor dog was trying to like, he's like, I have nothing to do with her, dude. Like, this is all her. Like, trust me, she does this stuff all the time. So that's more of the story. Stop calling the police on people of color, please. Becky's and Karen's.
It's dangerous. God damn it.
Yeah, there will be some serious talking to the management after this.
I just thought because everyone was going to be inside, we could avoid this only for that reason. Not because we got less racist, but evidently that was not correct.
Can't we all just get along, man? Yeah, she had no clue how to handle the dog, from a former dog trainer, says Neil. That's right. Yeah. Shout out to Henninger Part 2, all the people that are watching us for the first time. We're going to have an awesome guest tonight. Brendan, Wiles, and Socrates will be joining us in just a bit. Next top story.
Oh, yeah.
Uncle Joe.
Joe Biden said something stupid. Actually, I don't even know what it is.
That can be an ongoing segment for sure.
What was it? Which one was it, though? That's what I'm confused about. Got some voter depression.
Yeah. So, folks that don't know, there was a thing with he went on the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God and and he was interviewing him, and he cut it short at the end. He's like, oh, they told him like, Vice President, we have to go. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. And he's like, and Charlemagne said, you don't cut like that interview show with black media or something like that. Like, hey man, I do it with white media too. Like, I gotta go. And then Charlemagne basically told him like, like that he still wanted to hear what he was going to do for the black community. And then at that point, he's like, like, come on, man, figuring out whether you're for me or Trump. If you're figuring out whether you're for me or for Trump, then you ain't black. And like, you ain't black. So of course, the meme generators that is, all those awesome people out there had a lot of amazing memes, that were put out. So, but yeah, this is the latest in a long series of flubs. He had to apologize for that ultimately. But man,
yeah. Look forward to that. But all the Democrats support Biden, so all of our progressive heroes, so guess you just have to, right?
That's what I hear. Oh, see, here it is. He's right.
Got the memes.
Y'all ain't black.
Dola's all memes.
Oh man, yeah. So all sorts of stuff. And the last story, our segue story into our awesome guest here tonight.
It's a segue story. Sorry.
Segue. We need a class war, not a cultural war. This was This was according to jaaammmmin.com. Jacobin. So this was a very a good read. I totally encourage folks to read it. I'll read parts of it, and then but then it's very good. But basically, it talks about with the defeat of Bernie Sanders' campaign, numerous postmortems have attempted to diagnose what went wrong and what could have, should have, and would have been. And Angela Nagel and Michael Tracy of American Affairs essay wrote, first as tragedy, then as farce, the collapse of the Sanders campaign and the fusions left. So that's another article worth reading. So the article says, while feigning a kind of no-nonsense analysis, Nagel and Tracy account of what went wrong is at root a cry for better messaging and more responsible leadership. It's a grand narrative which puts clear protagonists on the center stage of world history: intellectuals, media professionals, and other members of the chattering class. Working people themselves, their limited choices and complex relationships with the Democratic Party are given only passing mention in Nagel and Tracy's essay. Goes on to say that if you asked me in 2015, I would have told you that the left-wing presidential candidate could only succeed in their campaign if they emerged from a vibrant union movement buttressed by mass political organizations. Bernie turned that formula on its head. Instead of emerging out of a vibrant labor movement from below, he aimed to catalyze a popular force from above, a grassroots army of volunteers, small donors, and voters that might just get him over the finish line and into the White House. A left-winger charting a path to the left to the presidency with virtually no visible left was a daring maneuver, and it almost worked. Seen in this light, Nagel and Tracy's suggestion that the campaign must be understood as a bitter defeat, a defeat not just for the Sanders campaign, but the whole contemporary American left, is overwrought, bordering on hysteria. What they don't understand is that Sanders' campaign wasn't an attempt to save the American left. It was an attempt to build one. And with that, I want to bring on to the show Socrates, Cruz, and Brendan Wiles. Socrates Cruz is an Orange County native from Costa Mesa. He's a graduate of Harvard College, where he studied political history in 2020. He worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign as a national advance staff. He's currently living in rural Vermont in the middle of the Green Mountains. Welcome to the show, Socrates. And Brendan Wiles is the deputy field director for Bernie Sanders in California and later in New York. Before that, he worked on campaigns of all levels in Southern California and also wrote for the Voice of Orange County, Voice of OC, friends of the show. In the coming weeks, he will be launching a political peer-to-peer texting platform that will provide campaigns and organizations highly affordable rates in order for them to communicate effectively and frequently. Welcome, Brendan. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's up?
Thank you, Jose and Dylan. Pleasure to be
Thanks, guys.
here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll start with the more bearded one, Socrates. Yeah, although I must say, like, the beards that you grew, Socrates and Brendan, like, your stash, like, man, like, it's pretty epic. But yeah, so back to you, my bearded mountain green friend, Socrates. How are you?
Pretty good, man.
Who
Thanks
are
for
you?
having me. Yeah, it's been a while. It's last time I was with you guys, I was in the studio. This was another lifetime ago, right?
Yeah.
About a year ago, but yeah.
So much has happened since then, man. We were young pups full of visions and dreams of grandeur and political revolution overtaking the White House, and it just came crashing down.
Yeah, no, I think it was it was an interesting year. And not just because of the campaign, obviously, broader, bigger issues that are kind of affected and brought everything down to an abrupt end, I think prematurely in some regards. But yeah, man, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Absolutely. Socrates, you've been on the show before, so like we kind of found out a little bit about your background and stuff, and you work with politics in Costa Mesa in particular. But I wanted to maybe ask Brendan, since it's your first time on the show, what was your journey, in Reader's Digest version of of your epic tale in Orange County politics?
I mean, it is a interesting question, and it's one that I love sharing just because I feel like it's strange. It's not necessarily, hard for anybody else to pursue, but there's a lot of uncertainty going into it. So, I had like a typical graduating from, going to college, being told that was the way to get the job. I went to UC Irvine. I studied political science because I wanted to do journalism and I wanted to work in politics. I didn't really know what that meant though. And basically when I graduated, it was 2011. It was the economic crash. There was no opportunity to get really any type of job. And so it was volunteering on Obama's campaign in 2012. I met this woman who said, if you like politics and if you like journalism, then you need to get in touch with David Washburn and Noberto Santana at the Voice of OC.
Nice.
I met up with them. They brought me on, and they said, just follow us, what we do, and we'll teach you how to do it. And I did that for about 2 years, covering politics in Anaheim, Santa Ana, Irvine, Costa Mesa, the county of Orange, and Fullerton. And after 2 years of that, I just decided, like, I've done all this research. I followed all this kind of stuff at the local level. I want to get the bad actors out though, and I want to work on campaigns instead. And then from there, I mean, that's where it kind of it's the same thing. It was a lot of volunteering until I got a position. I worked on Loretta Sanchez's campaign for U.S. Senate because she was my congresswoman in Orange County. And then from there, worked on Andy Thorburns' campaign. He was running against Ed Royce. Gil Cisneros has that seat now. I got the first Native American elected to the California Assembly, a gentleman named James Ramos, who's a great guy. And then that got me, to Bernie, seeing the entire state, field operation, and, basically keeping the campaign alive with a really good showing, with all of our volunteers, all of our staff, like especially yourself, Jose. We had a lot of days working in the Orange County office together, to New York. And then now it's, what is something like 2 months since the Super Tuesday. 2-3 months feels like a lifetime ago. It's completely different. And now we're talking over Zoom instead of, meeting up in one room to hold this interview like I normally see on the older episodes of It's Happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Socrates, like, you probably knew before any of us, stop lying, that like the campaign was sputtering to a halt. You were in the room where it happened. Tell us. No, but for reals, I mean, you are, me and Brendan, we had a particular experience, including Dylan, who's also an awesome volunteer at different times, with working the campaign here in California. But you got to hang out with Cornel West and Bernie Sanders, like, no big deal. AOC, how's it going? Like, let me get a hug. Like it was like, how was that? And then how was it for you to like slowly but surely realize that it wasn't gonna happen?
Yeah, no, it was crazy. So for those, I guess I'll briefly explain kind of what my function was on the campaign. In 2016, I volunteered, I canvassed, I went out to Iowa, did some stuff in New Hampshire as well, and then a little bit in upstate New York, and then in Massachusetts. And for 2020, I knew he was going to run again. I knew I wanted to be involved, and I originally was just going to do field, and then series of things happened. I ended up on the advanced team. Didn't know what advance was. Advance is basically handles all the rallies, all the town halls, all the production, works with surrogates, all the big stuff. So like this photo here, that was one of my sites. So basically they'd fly us around, we'd like land, we'd have to find a location. So we'd work closely with the field teams and figure out, how big of a crowd we were expecting. We'd lock down a site, and then that's where I would kind of start designing sites, building out production, and then running the shows on game day. So that was exciting. I started a little over a year ago, and I was on the road for large portions of that. And then they basically assigned me to be full-time in Iowa because he was in Iowa so frequently. They sent some of us to just be there full-time. He was basically there like every week, if not every 2 weeks. So it was crazy. It was interesting to get into Iowa, and it was like ground zero. I got there around July and kind of saw how the campaign started ramping up. The Iowa team, the Iowa in-state team, with the political department and all the outreach, all the field, everything. That's when they started building it up as well. So it was cool to see. I remember like we would have these meetings in Des Moines in the state office every morning, and we would just it was weird to see the team just expand. And to see kind of how everyone was just kind of really working in their little silo, and how everything would come together whenever the center would come in for the rallies and all that stuff. So yeah, it was pretty cool. To your point, it was definitely a privilege to kind of be in, have a kind of like a backstage view to the whole thing, and see how a lot of the surrogates and the high brass on the campaign kind of interacted with one another and with the senator. I will say that I think, I considered myself a Bernie bro, like diehard, like love Bernie, like idolize this guy. And in the course of being there and seeing things from like really, really up close, he became much more human, and I actually admire him more than I even used to. Like, he's such a like flawed human being in so many ways. People say he's grumpy, he doesn't like to, do all that stuff. But that's so endearing. It's like much more endearing when you're like, you see him pacing backstage before he's going to give a big speech, and he's just like in the zone, and he's like, he's got his notes, and he really, really cares about all this stuff. So it was weird to you never had a chance to geek out about it when you were in it. But in retrospect, yeah, it was really, really cool. It was really fast paced. It was basically a dream job, a confluence of a lot of things that I had done. I'd worked in politics before, but I also did a lot of music production and touring and booking and all that stuff. So it just all kind of came together. Really, really cool. Also, just the rest of the team, very, very tight knit community of advancers. We're all still in touch. And yeah, at the end of the campaign, I actually had the honor of having the last basically so after the Michigan primary that night, he was going to fly into Cleveland to do a big rally there, and that was my rally, and it was going to be televised. All the networks were going to go live, and then he basically an hour before doors were going to open and we are going to start letting everyone in, the governor issued the statement that all public events were canceled. So literally my rally, like it was all built, everything was ready to go. And we, the results were coming in from Michigan, by then Super Tuesday had happened. So I actually broke down. That was like really cathartic for me at that moment. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure. Like that whole week was really, really chaotic. I went in like 10 days, I went from South Carolina to Arizona to LA, the LA rally, to Jackson, Mississippi, to Flint, Michigan, and then to Cleveland, Ohio. And so this was all within like 10 days or something. It was insane. And every place you get to, you have like 24 hours to literally find like a venue, build up the crowd, build a press, everything, and then run the show. So
speakers.
It was nuts. It was getting crazy by the end, and then just to kind of wrap it up, I got asked to basically come up to Burlington in Vermont that night, and we all basically thought that was it. Like that was, it was like, why was he going to Burlington instead of continuing? We thought it was gonna wrap up, and we ended up basically just doing like a week of pressers at just downtown. We did that's what he did, kind of like tricked the press into thinking he was going to concede, and then they gave him a bunch of airtime when he talked about his everything with COVID response and all that. So that's basically why I ended up in Vermont. Once the campaign suspended, I just stayed here. Didn't really want to go back to California. My parents were a little older. I was flying around a lot. Thought I might be exposed, so I didn't want to kind of, go see them and get them sick.
Right.
So I'm still here, and I'm going to be here for a while in Vermont, just kind of regrouping, getting healthy, and trying to get involved remotely as much as I can.
Right.
We miss you. Yeah, that's yeah, no, it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions. From being, I mean, California. I'm sure Brendan can speak to it as well, but we were so stoked and excited because we're winning. Like, we were expecting like this to be our big day, and instead, we started seeing these things happening. The forces that be behind the scenes that were moving, and Obama said like, if at any point I feel like Bernie's gonna like run away with it, I'm going to do something about it, allegedly. And boy, did he! Did everybody bend the knee, to Obama, and not to Biden, to Obama, and even still, you're seeing how difficult probably it is a choice for him. It was like, well, somebody has to. I guess this is the guy, and everybody move out of the way, and so. California, the mainstream media, I don't even think ever announced that he won that night, because they didn't want to give him anything, just like they didn't want to give him Iowa, and also Texas was disappointing. So I mean, Brendan, what was the difference between what we did in California to what was done in Texas and perhaps other states that was successful here and not over there?
Yeah, I can't I don't think I can speak necessarily really in depth about exactly what Texas did on the ground, but I can say that they didn't have nearly as much staff as we did, and Texas is a large place. There's a lot of voters to reach out to there, and so I think they had to rely a lot more on the distributed model of organizing volunteers, of having volunteers organize other volunteers. And so, I do wonder sometimes, what if we had split our staff between California and Texas or something like that. But we obviously, we staked a lot on performing really well in California for the campaign, and you can see that by the fact that we had something like I think we had more than 20 offices, and we were just short of 100 staff in California. And I think I've repeated this type of information so many times. It's I feel like I'm I almost want to forget it, but it's we broke the state up into 6 parts, and we had basically 6, campaign managers, in each part of California. You had Sacramento, you had the Bay Area, you had the Central Valley, LA, Orange County, Inland Empire, and then you had San Diego, with each of their offices, with each of their field organizers, their regional field directors who oversaw them, like you, Jose, out of the Orange County office. And I think, what we did really well in California was that there was a very cohesive plan, which was stuck to and was followed, which is that we knew who we had to reach out to, which was, people who weren't necessarily going to vote, non-typical voters, right? People who don't show up historically to vote, and they don't get approached by campaigns, and they don't get the mailers by campaigns, and people don't knock on their doors at any level of campaign. And so those were the places we were going to go to, and we were going to drive turnout in those areas, and it was predominantly in working class Latino areas, and areas with youth, right? It was like probably in a nutshell the main strategy. And we stuck to that, and we followed that, and all across the state, that was, you know, probably the significant thing that everyone was focused on. And we had a cycle of what my good friend Lewis Myers, who was the area field director for LA, he called it the momentum cycle, where it's, you're doing what we call the barnstorms, bringing people in, getting them into the program of the campaign, and then you're moving them to action, to either phone bank or canvas. And during this whole time, throughout the week, where field organizers and regional field directors are calling through volunteers to build capacity for their canvases and phone banks, for the people who were showing up, you're identifying them as to whether or not they're leaders. And, I can go into detail about that, but you're finding the people who are self-motivated leaders within the campaign who are doing the work, and you move them up and you give them more responsibility to take on more, and to do more for the campaign, for its benefit, to reach out to even more voters, right, and more volunteers. And again, like that momentum cycle and that plan was followed, I would say, to a T. No campaign is like what you can say, like, quote unquote perfect, but for what we had control of, like in California, and how the staff that I worked with, like the state director Rafa and the field director Jarrell, deputy state director Shelly Jackson, like the plan that we put forward was like, obviously we would have discussions and we'd have disagreements, but there was nothing like toxic about it. It was like we knew what we wanted to accomplish. And we were always like moving forward in like, how are we going to make sure that this happens? Even if we did have disagreements, it wasn't like someone wants to go off in one area and do this thing and someone wants to do that. Like, it was like a really healthy working relationship. And it was honestly, like, again, I think this is one of the best campaigns I've ever worked on in my entire life. For California, I wish it would have happened. Of course, right. I wish it would have Yeah, I know. I'm like, and then everything else happened. I wish it would have shaken out in a different way. But for what we were able to do in California, and what we were able to demonstrate, I would say it was one of the best, like, well-oiled field operations that I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, and we got results. Right.
Exactly. But Dylan, you jumping in and saying, wait, you're completely right. Like, we did.
Yeah, you caught me there.
There was more. It's just that it's one of the biggest things about after a campaign, or even just joining onto a campaign, is that you stake your life in it, of like, you basically, like, you put your life on pause in order to participate in this campaign and take that role. And there are a lot of things that are completely out of your control, that you can't do anything about. And so you really do have to focus on exactly what it is that you can. And so I think with the people who worked in California and the volunteers who came to support us in California, we were like, we owned that in terms of like what we can do. We owned that work. And the results, I think, show for it,
Yeah, I think there's things that did very well, and I'm just wondering, because you guys tell me what your take on this is, but there was a moment there when Bernie was the forefront. He was the forerunner, right? And it looked like he was winning, or like getting a significant amount of the early states and stuff. And then as things came through and Super Tuesday came through, like the trend wasn't consistent, and he kind of tanked or flatlined. And I'm wondering, was that because the strategy was to focus on the early ones to get that momentum, but then that momentum never came through? Or how do you see that? Maybe Socrates want to take a shot.
Yeah, so Brendan's right. I mean, the strategy was very clearly, one, expand the electorate, right? So you're not going to go for these, like, the usual voters. And decisions were made both on the hiring level and on the resource level, the allocation of resources, to really follow through with that. And like I said, I spent 6 months in Iowa on the ground and saw that they ran an incredible campaign. I know it was really close, but we knew it was going to be close all along. Our internal data, like, was showing that it was going to be really, really close, and that Biden was basically our main competitor. throughout the national. And Buttigieg just kept creeping up as Biden sunk within Iowa. But it was going to be close no matter who the vote was going to be split with. And but the outreach efforts in Iowa were phenomenal. Like the Latino outreach is essentially why we ended up winning in Iowa, right? Like the satellite caucuses. I was lucky enough to I mean, there was kind of an internal joke within the event team about like me doing all of the Unidos con Bernie events, which I literally did. But yeah, I mean, like we did so many incredible things. I remember, I don't even know how much press it ended up getting outside of Iowa, but we did like a soccer tournament, like a futbolito like tournament, where we registered voters and stuff, and like bilingual. It was like 3 languages actually. It was for the immigrant community in general. So little things like that. We would do so many things throughout the state. Iowa's very huge, very disparate in different parts. But what that night I remember was the results kept coming in over the next couple of days. Like, yeah, we were bummed. We got robbed of that election night victory, but in the end, it was because of the Latino outreach. And I know they tried to kind of replicate that in Texas, but there just weren't enough resources. And to a certain extent, we won the parts of Texas that we were supposed to win, but it just wasn't enough for the threshold. For a bigger comment, I think, is really the momentum did happen, but there was the counter, which was, the coalescing behind Biden, which was just really, we could have planned for it, but the way it happened was insane, right? I mean, like Buttigieg dropped out having more delegates than Biden. Like that's insane. Like that never happens. Why, if you're ahead, if you're leading, why would you drop out and hand over? So I mean, whether it's Obama or whatever, the DNC establishment or whatever, but like the reality is that there was a massive coordination between Klobuchar, Buttigieg, Beto endorsed that same night as well, and everyone just flooded for Biden. And I think those people that were on the line, the voters that could have gone for us, because that's the thing. Biden, once again, was our main Biden voters. There were swing voters that could go, that liked Biden, but also liked Bernie. And all those people ended up just going for Biden. So that's why something like Massachusetts happened, where like Biden never campaigned, but there were so many people that, liked Bernie, but Trump, defeating Trump was the deciding factor for them. So they went with Biden because that's what they were basically told to do by other candidates, by the media. And so that momentum, I remember on Super Tuesday when that happened, we're trying to like make the best of it and keep going. But to me, that was like, that's power. That's like real, pardon my French, real fucking power, right? Like where you can actually organize that effectively on the bureaucratic level within the party to shift, like Biden came in like 4th place in Iowa. Like that's, didn't even like show up in New Hampshire. Like this is insane. You could kind of artificially manufacture this kind of momentum, but you can. And I think what it really showed was that the left just wasn't ready. We didn't have any answer to that kind of momentum. And that's just the harsh reality. It hurts, but I think in 2016, Hillary was a lot more unpopular than people realize, right? A lot of these people, especially one thing that's interesting, you look at these rural areas throughout the country that went for Bernie last time, and this time they went for Biden. So there's a number of factors that go into that, right? One, Biden is the inevitable candidate, so they're going to gravitate towards him because they want to beat Trump. That's the number one factor. But also, people just hated Hillary, and there were a lot of voters in 2016 that voted for Bernie because he was the only alternative. So maybe we misread the tea leaves and we thought that there was more momentum or more support throughout the country or in specific pockets than there really was. But I think, now there's a lot of frustration in the grassroots throughout the country, especially in California. But and what I'm seeing is I think people are failing to understand the difference between the movement and the campaign. And the campaign, the movement, the progressive movement has to be grassroots. I mean, that's Bernie's entire theory. It has to be grassroots, bottom up. But a campaign happens so fast, especially right after Iowa. Like you have a full year to prepare for that. And then it's boom, 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 boom. And like, in 2 weeks, everything just can completely flip on its head. And to that extent, a campaign it's almost the opposite of a movement, just intrinsically. It has to be a really finely tuned machine. there has to be a chain of command that you have to, like, some people develop the strategy, some people crank the numbers, some people deliver, and that's it. And like, you have to take marching orders because that's your job. And if you're going to win, like Brendan was saying, everyone has to do their job at every single point. And that can be really frustrating for a lot of organizers and a lot of activists that haven't participated in campaigns like that, because it's not your job to necessarily to question that. It's your job to like deliver on whatever it is. For me, my job was, literally they're like, for this event back here, it was like, we're gonna have an 800 person town hall in like South Carolina. We booked the space. All of a sudden, RSVPs are like over 3,000. One day before the rally, I have to like find another space and make all that happen. That's my job. I can't complain. I can't be like, oh, like, why don't we do it in another city? No. This is my job. I have to do my job. And when it comes to organizing, it's like, look, you got to get these numbers. We have to flip these precincts, whatever. That's what you do. And yeah, that can be frustrating for a lot of people. But it's a campaign, and it Obama, yeah, he had his faults, but Obama 08 was like one of the probably the most effectively run campaign of all time. Like, it was so incredible. And like, we can question like, he sold out, whatever, he didn't, he flip-flopped on these issues. Okay, fine. But the campaign, as an apparatus, exceptional.
Yeah,
right?
He ran a damn good campaign, at least.
Ran a damn good campaign. Things lined up in his favor as well. He got momentum when he needed to. People coalesced behind him when they needed to. He got that, Ted Kennedy endorsed him. As soon as he endorsed him, kind of signaled to a lot of people that, okay, he's not someone we need to worry about. So yeah, with Bernie, yeah, we can blame it on a lot of things. We can blame it on Warren that like she didn't endorse. We can blame it on, everyone for backing Biden. We can blame it on the media. But in the end, if we were ready to govern, we should have been ready to counter that as a campaign. And I'm not saying, I think the campaign was well run up to the point where it like collapsed. But
the humble answer, Socrates. I do appreciate that.
It's internally, I know I saw like the resources that were allocated, and yeah, I mean, there was, we can question whether the strategy was wise or not, but in California it delivered, in Iowa it delivered, New Hampshire delivered, and then South Carolina came along, and it was just bloodbath.
Yeah. Well,
my car ran well too until my transmission went out. Damn it.
So, Socrates, I know you were bringing up this distinction between the campaign and the movement, and maybe before we talk more about the movement, can we just revisit what was the win from the campaign? I mean, we didn't obviously achieve the primary objective, but what do you think we gained along the way? I mean, maybe Brendan can take a shot, and Socrates, you can
go for Brendan. Yeah.
After that.
And I think that the campaign was based on the campaign was, I would say, based on a platform, right, of universal benefits for people who've been left behind and who need them most, right? Medicare for all, college for all, childcare, ending college debt, canceling college debt, I should say, for people. We were working on things with criminal justice reform. I think right around the time of COVID, there was some talk about some rent control work that we were working on. I mean, these are policies that were basically untalked about at like a really national level and at a serious level. They were like more like kind of like conceptual, like, old ideas, which is what's weird about it, is that it's not like these are really that new. I mean, they've been talking about having a single payer health system, I think back to the time of like Truman or Roosevelt, that they've had this idea. But Bernie brought light to that. And it's not crazy to support these types of things that are universal programs. And it's not crazy to say, people just for the sake of people who are living in the United States, that they deserve to have these types of things afforded to them, and we can all come together and use our tax money for this, rather than just trying to constantly lower taxes for millionaires and billionaires. And I would say so that would be the one thing that I would say, like what came about from this campaign. I would say that's the first thing. A lot of the policies that Bernie pushed are what we would call, for however you want to argue about it, but they are what you would call mainstream. There are a lot of politicians who are also taking up these policies and they are getting elected, and holding those positions. And I would say the other thing, which I think is something that it takes a longer time to find out how much of an impact it had, but there are people who got energized because of Bernie's campaign, and who came out to volunteer, for the first time in their life, or made a contribution to a candidate for the first time in their life. And what I do, I guess this is more like aspirational and optimistic, but what I hope in terms of what this campaign did is that it energized these people to get involved on a level beyond simply, turning in their ballot, but to, again, like expand their voice by helping other people vote, and by supporting the candidates that they believe in to run an effective campaign. And so, again, Socrates had just like he hit the nail on the head about what's the difference between a campaign and a movement. And then it's that a campaign has a finite end date. We raise all the money so that we can spend all of it. And then after election day, basically everyone's gone. The offices close, the staff doesn't work on the campaign anymore. And because we have such a short amount of time with a limited amount of resources, we're not afforded the ability to invest in things that might be, longer term, and like more fruitful in terms of like how it would necessarily benefit like the general public, because what our focus is on is again, like exactly like what Socrates said, is like it's trying to get someone in office to have power so that they can help the people that are supporting him.
Right. So, one thing, for Bernie, the campaign was always just a part of the broader movement, right? And he was very explicit about that in 2016. I mean, the only reason he ran in 2016 was, one, because no one was challenging Hillary, and two, because he realized he could use that, a national presidential primary, to talk about these issues that no one had talked about at that point. And so he continued that. For him, it was really a 5-6 year campaign, right? He basically never stopped campaigning. But all within the context of this broader movement that he was trying to build. In this case, this time around, it was very, very clearly manifested as bringing new people, young people, and you saw it, right? So you saw how strong of a support he had within, amongst young voters compared to all these other candidates. Okay. So one way of looking at this is like, as Brendan was saying, the campaign ends, and you either win or you lose. So we lost. So okay, maybe it was a failure. If you look at like Warren's campaign or like Buttigieg's campaign, like they lost. What did they do? What did they accomplish? Nothing. They didn't change the conversation. They didn't advance anything. They didn't involve any new voters either. When you look at Bernie's campaign,
memes.
When you look at Bernie's campaign,
cool dance. He did have a cool dance.
That's what made Bernie's campaign so different from any other, I think any other presidential campaign ever, because it was just a vehicle for this broader movement. And so even though we lost the campaign, and it ended, right, not the way we wanted, but the movement continues to grow. You got all these new people involved. Yeah, people are frustrated. A lot of people feel pretty let down. I think a lot of people are justifiably angry at like the Democratic Party and the political establishment, the media establishment as well. And I think that's good. I think people need the space to be angry and to like go through these stages of grief, right? But I think in the long run, we're going to have. We've already seen it. I mean, we saw it with AOC last time. There's going to be so many more candidates like this up and down the ballot all over the country because of this spark that Bernie started, a couple of years ago, and that continued with this campaign. So, obviously it was an honor to be a part of it, but it was also like really, really inspiring and really humbling to be able to see this all over the country. I mean, like the team in California was there were a lot of talented people on the team in California. In Iowa, it was crazy because like they had people from like all over the country that like wanted to be in Iowa, and I mean, like there's so many people. I mean, like Brooke Adams, Michael Fasulo. These guys are like they're like total badasses, total incredible organizers, and they're gonna be running some incredible campaigns in the years to come. all these FOs, all these RFDs all around the state. You know, in Nevada had attracted really, really cool organizers as well, and really involved the communities there. So this is long lasting.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what we did in Nevada, right? We swept that. It was incredible. Those things you're building. That's longer momentum, and it's tougher to like analyze that. So when you read all these postmortems, like what happened to the campaign, why did it fail? They're looking at the campaign. If you want to look at the movement, there's a lot deeper analysis that you can make. So I think it's important for people to really make that distinction if they want to not come out of this really cynical and really bummed. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm referencing all those great people you're working with. It just makes me think of like Marvel comics, like the local superhero squad send their best fighter to temporarily form X Factor on behalf of Bernie Sanders. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
like
Bernie attracted incredible, like all of the best organizers all over the country wanted to work for Bernie. They didn't want to work for Warren. They want like it was incredible, right? All these young people, all these, you know, high schoolers that like started canvassing. They got all the training they got, right? Mm-hmm. And so my hope is that people don't become cynical, that they actually like, now that whatever skills they acquired either as a volunteer, as a staffer, whatever on the campaign, they actually start using those at the local level. And, you know, maybe even like bring some of your buddies from the Bernie campaign and like, you know, help take over a city council and like really enact this kind of change at the local level. But I think, like I said, people are going to have to grieve for a little bit, especially right now with COVID and Biden being such a downer candidate that no one is excited about. But the movement's going to continue. I'm not really worried about that.
Yeah. So speaking a little more on the movement, I guess for me, the main question now for the movement is the movement supposed to go into a third party? Was that the lesson we learned from these last two elections? Because, I mean, and let me just offer a critique that people like Jimmy Dore or Dylan Radigan will say. And it's like, all these gains were good. Like all the things we're talking about are amazing. But then these people, like there's a critique from a part of the left that's saying, yeah, that's great. But recently it seems like AOC, Bernie, all of our progressive champions are just kowtowing to the party line. And they can't really meaningfully oppose Nancy Pelosi. So like, is this a dead end for this strategy? Like we got our champions in here, but at the end of the day, when they say they're Joe Biden's friend and they don't pose any meaningful opposition to the bailout that just occurred, you have to wonder, like, is there a cognitive dissonance here? Like, can we achieve these left goals in the Democratic Party? And this, whoever wants to take that.
Okay, I'll start off.
Go for it, and I'll hit you. I'll hit it next. Yeah.
Cool. So I am. I've been an independent for a long time. I think at the moment I'm not only an independent, I'm also anti-Democratic Party. I identify as anti-Democratic Party.
Okay.
Having said that, what I mean by that is that I don't really care. I don't really care about the Democratic Party one way or another. I think, especially at the national level, it doesn't even matter, right? Like you have so many people that are NPP in California, the second largest voting bloc, you know, more NPPs than Republicans in California. If you just look at California, we have all 8 state positions are held by Democrats. State assembly is you know, Democratic majority, everything, you know, like state Senate, state assembly, it doesn't really matter that it's the Democratic Party. So if people want to like try to reform the party, that's cool. But like, I think you almost have to look at like, you get more bang for your buck starting. It's a lot more work. It's not as sexy, but you got to start local. You got to start really like building movements that local politicians can come out of, and then congressional candidates can come out of that. And like, it takes a long fucking time, and people that, you know, especially like people like Jimmy Dore and stuff like that, they're not looking at that local level. They're not like really thinking about it as a movement. Once again, the movement transcends electoral politics. It has to, by definition. And if we're so the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they're just political parties that, you know, are there to like help win elections, help steer some sort of platform, which I don't really think even exists in reality. So if you're going to fight, so here's the thing, you're fighting for not just the issues you care about, but you're also fighting institutions in that case. So, local politics, it's nonpartisan. Like these are technically nonpartisan elections. I don't really care. Like there's some Republican mayors that I think are cool. There's some Democratic mayors I think are shit. Like who cares? So I think that's where people need to start. I think when you look at state politics, same thing in states like California, it doesn't fucking matter. And like congressional races tend to be really sexy, and that's where a lot of the attention goes. And it's like, we need to hold this seat, we need to flip it, so then we can get Harley Ruda to like pretend he's for Medicare for all and then never fucking, actually back it. Like, but that's
Blue wave, damn it.
That just points to the fact that if we actually had a progressive movement in like the 48th congressional, then we could actually challenge Ruda effectively. But if we're just going to be having this rotating cast of electeds that don't really respond, they don't really spawn from any movements, and they don't really respond to any of those constituencies, it doesn't fucking matter what party you're from. I will just add this really quickly. I was talking to a buddy of mine who is an organizer in Minneapolis. Minneapolis, what they did, he told me, he was like, look, man, like the campaign came in and they were able to actually do something which Minneapolis hadn't been able to do in a while. Because everyone loved Bernie, all the leftists, DSA loved Bernie, like all these like hardcore commies, like, progressive Democrats, independents, everyone like came around, they volunteered, they'd canvassed for the campaign. Mm-hmm. Campaign ended, that's it. What did they do? They all stayed together, and now they're running this really, really progressive slate in Minneapolis, which they might actually win city council there. So that's the power of a campaign, right? The campaign can bring the attention, it can bring all the spotlight on these issues, which is what Bernie did effectively, but then it's up to the people to continue that movement. And so now people are pissed off that like there's these super PACs being formed, whatever, but the campaign's over. If you want to still be part of the movement, there's a lot of work to be done. And, there are ways to be productive in spite of the electoral defeat, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Dylan's question about, is it a third party that we need? I mean, I can't really see that being something that's going to be like the most effective way in order to enact the policies that we want. And that I think it kind of it would follow a model of like someone like Bernie, where it's like, I'm an independent, right? And he runs as a Democrat, where it's like he gets to be on that party line for the ballot, and gets all of that benefit, gets to participate in the Democratic debates. And then, if people want to nitpick about it, it's like all the things that, turn people off to political parties, you could say, well, he's not a part of that, and that's his benefit, right? And he just runs as a Democrat because that's the way that the system's set up. And I think given that kind of the way that our political system is set up in the United States, I just don't know if there's necessarily a feasibility, but also kind of like a political imagination to imagine that there can be another party that can like effectively replace, something like a Democratic Party, or capture all of the attention of progressives, people who want to enact progressive policies in the United States. If we had, I think, like a proportional parliament or representative parliament type thing like we see in Europe, where political parties are forming coalitions with each other, and it's kind of like, new parties are popping up all the time. I could see that the discussion around creating a new party could be something that's worthwhile, but I think it's really, and again, it relates to, the fact that you threw out there about like the fastest growing registration across the board is people who don't register for any party. So really, I mean, I would say at best it's either running absent a party, or it is continuing to try to follow the Bernie model, which I think is, I will admit, is probably very hard to do, but to fund your campaign on small dollar donations, which then holds you accountable, to the people who are supporting you, and if you can have the good fortune in some cases to have a campaign that goes, in a sense, captures the national attention, You can have the ability to fund a campaign and mount a real campaign as required. And you can also, if you are effectively using volunteers and earning their support and trust, as you should be doing if you're running a grassroots campaign, you can leverage that to expand the electorate and to make sure that people turn out and vote. And and then be accountable to them, right? And I think it kind of goes like both ways. It goes for the candidate, but it also goes for the people in terms of the movement. Like, if we can build and I couldn't necessarily like give you a roadmap of how you do this, but building a block of voters, right, that we want a certain thing, and demonstrating that our vote comes with your support of that, right? And enticing candidates to support these types of positions, so that we don't just have one person who's supporting something like Medicare for all. Maybe we can have multiple candidates that are going to support Medicare for all. We did have that in the primary to a degree, because people were picking up on that. I think it was hard to shake away Bernie's support. I think he pretty much kind of had a lock on the progressive mantle, but it was definitely something fought over. But in terms of like other people running for office, courting these voters, and the voters themselves, banding together, I would say. And I don't know how necessarily that type of collective decision can come, you can come to that kind of decision. But I think having a block like that, I think, could be very important. I think things like DSA, they are like an attempt to have that type of a block of voters, right? They're not a political party, but they do demonstrate that like we want candidates. We will back and support candidates, with our volunteering and with our money, if you're going to walk the walk. And I think that would be probably how I would think we can start to see some sort of changes. Which that's what I would advocate for, rather than saying let's start a third party. I can't see that would be something that can be effective.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing about that is that, I mean, it is interesting that most people, or the growing demographic, is no party preference, right? I mean, I think that's an opportunity. And it's just that, yeah, I mean, thus far in our history, this is impossible. No one has established a competitive third party, barring perhaps Teddy Roosevelt around the turn of the century with his Progressive Party. But I mean, I almost see it as like an inevitability, like considering that, since Clinton, it just seems like both parties have really gone into the clutches of the like oligarchs. Basically, they're bought and sold for the most part. And like, I'm like not totally against the idea that you could reform the Democratic Party. I just can't, like, I mean, I know like AOC, Bernie, they're all way more progressive than your average person. But when something like the bailout just happens and none of them provide a meaningful opposition to what's happening, and like, for instance, the Democrats, like the Republicans had like the Freedom Caucus, they've had their own rebellions within the party. I haven't seen anything even close to that. I mean, AOC is probably the closest, having openly defying their policies and raising money on their own and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer. I'm honestly open to all strategies. For sure. And I mean, I like what Socrates was talking about. Like, maybe in the future, it won't really matter what party you're from. It reminds me of the progressive, is this California progressive politicians group up in Richmond, California. It was a
California Progressive Alliance.
Right, that, yes. So like that's the platform that appeals to me, because it's like I don't at this point I don't give a crap what party you're from. If you have the right policies, if you're Tom Tate and you're asking for my vote, I'll vote for you. Like if you have better values than the other person. So anyway, sorry,
and to that like very specific point, you're talking about someone who he did things in office that were worthy of supporting, right?
Right.
He was against the hotel tax giveaways, and so it's like he should be rewarded, right?
Yes.
For that.
Right.
Which,
not for his party. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we're all
I
on
would-
board
Yep.
there.
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Jose.
I'm next. It's been like 30 minutes. I haven't spoken. No,
It's
no,
only your show.
no. The guests make the show. No, this is I
Indeed.
think like this is exactly what the conversation is that people are having all sorts of places. What is the future? I mean, personally, like, I think as you were mentioning, Brendan, like the system is structured as in a way where Bernie is an independent, went into the Democratic kind of process, but it doesn't mean that he's a Democrat or that he's necessarily like the one to fix the Democratic Party. He's just, he used the platform, the only one available to him. So I don't think it's fair to like attack him to the problems of reforming the Democratic Party. I think AOC perhaps bears more responsibility, but even still, she's a minority, and Pelosi reminds her all the time. I'm sure that there's a small group of them, and they're not enough, as was in the case of the Freedom Caucus of Republicans, to really make a big stink about things. And at the end of the day, I'm like, if people want to start a third party, great. Go and run Green Party or whatever other party, school board members, city council members, and win. And if you could do that, on like, even one or two, like I believe in Oregon, there's an openly a socialist, candidate that won a party,
Correct.
a seat on council. So it can't happen. It's not, and so then like, I think Megan Day, who was one of the writers of the book Beyond Bernie, which is really good. I have to kind of get on it, but it talks about, just how this moment where the Bernie campaign was this tent for all these ragtag groups, some anarchists, some DSA folks, some establishment folks. It was the coalition that was the block that was built for the moment. And then once, the moment's gone, it's like everybody goes back to what they were normally doing, DSA working on, Dem exit type of policies. Some folks are, working within the party. I think about like who voted for Bernie. One, a lot of Latinos, a lot of folks that hadn't had their door knocked on, but then also a lot of people that would not have voted for him if he weren't a Democrat, right? Like just facts. Like, is he a Democrat? They would tell me at the door. Okay, yeah, I like him. And then like we could talk, and then I could bring on the policies that would then be like, okay, this guy sounds better. That makes sense to me. So, and it doesn't mean that like the policies are dead on arrival, but it does. It's like constantly having to remind ourselves. It's like we can act a certain way as activists, but once we get into the electoral politics arena, like this is like like the big leagues. You need to come with big money, with big strategy, and with big people power, and a little bit of everything, because the corporations, they have so much fucking power, and I think politics has just shown that. It's interesting to me, like, the last point is that Trump was an insurrection in the Republican Party. Like, he was able to beat all the establishment that they threw at him, and he was able to ride the coattails of the Tea Party movement that kind of displaced a lot of these establishment type of a centrist Republicans. We need something like that in the Democratic Party desperately. And as Bernie always said, I think it starts from the bottom up. But and I think last, to the point of what you're saying, Socrates, I think a lot of people are angry. People are upset. People are upset at the there's upset at Chuck Rocha or Jeff Weaver and other folks saying that they tanked, they sabotaged the campaign for their own selfish endeavors, and and it just feels like there's a lot of that kind of like finger pointing and who's at fault and what went wrong, and because people are like you're saying, angry. But it's like, did they really tank the campaign? And also, like, are we really at a point in the left where we're so fractioned that we will never be able to mount something like this ever again? Because Bernie Sanders type candidates come once in a generation.
Yeah, I think there will never be another Bernie Sanders. I think that it was just such a unique story, and the way he was able to come up through independent politics in a place like Vermont, a place like Burlington, and transform that and just go into Congress and the Senate. And he was so weird because like the more you got to know his record, the more you liked him, right? That's so hard. Someone like AOC is now in a really challenging position because she's never gonna be able to like build that kind of resume because she's already in the spotlight at such a young age. So like her votes are they're already compromised, right? She's already gonna have to make those. She's already been making those tough decisions, and she's gonna piss off people, and she's it's a whole different story. But I think the one thing I will say about the people that are kind of angry and like there's like I was able to see like a lot of stuff on the ground that gave me a lot of hope because once again, the point you made, Jose, about people asking whether he's a Democrat or not, that matters to older voters for the most part. Younger voters don't give a shit about the parties because the Democratic Party hasn't done anything for them. The Republican Party really hasn't done anything for them either. So you're seeing more. I think there are two truths. One, the issues that the progressive platform tries to address are going to continue to be heightened as wealth inequality continues and as our political system prevents any real solutions from being enacted. So those are going to become more and more and more evident as they've already become. Bernie's been talking about this shit for 40 years, but they're way more obvious now than they were 40 years ago, right? So that trend is going to continue. And the other trend is that older voters who feel this allegiance to these political parties are going to start dying off. And the younger voters, as we're already seeing, they don't care what party. They're registering as independents. And what they care about are these issues and whether or not politicians are going to be addressing them on the local level, on the national level, whatever. So that's why I almost, if people want to like reform the party, that's cool. I don't think Bernie ever really cared about reforming the party. He cared about shifting the Overton window, highlighting all of these issues, Medicare for all, living wage, immigration reform, all this shit. That's what he cared about. He never really talked about reforming the Democratic Party because he knows that that's just a potential vehicle to like enact this kind of change. And once again, working within institutions seems like an easier thing, or it seems like an easier entry for a lot of people, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'll run to be a delegate, and I'll have a vote, and that'll change the bylaws. No, it's much tougher to like actually change these existing institutions. In that regard, right? There's a whole different kind of work that you can do, getting involved locally, talking to your family, talking to your classmates, all this shit. Like, it's a different kind of work, but I think it's more sustainable. And I think in the long run, it's gonna, that's kind of the only thing we have to counter,
Yeah. And Jose, we're going to give you another turn, man. You got to unmute yourself.
You know what has been helping recently? I've been reading Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. Man, that's it's like necessary reading. I think people we just really need to develop our revolutionary theory, and I feel Paulo Freire like lays it out perfectly. It's like it's praxis and it's action. Like you need to have critical reflection on what it is that you're trying to do. Pick your battles, and also like at the same time that you're reflecting on them, acting on them, because it's like action without reflection is activism, and reflection without action is verbalism. You become like just clicktivist or like coffee shop revolutionary type peoples, right? So I think this is the moment for us to really hunker down, especially in this quarantine, and really delve deep into like what it is that we think that like what's our theory of change? What is our angle? Is it really through electoral politics? So maybe it's not. It shouldn't be. Like we can't stomach it. Many people, it's very apparent that they're not cut out for it. They should stick to the grassroots lane. Or some people will infiltrate into the nonprofit sector and kind of work, because at the end of the day, people need to make money. Like money makes all these things run, like whether it's like us as consumers and us buying the corporations, products that then funds these whack candidates, or, us being able to donate $5-10 a month, to be able to fund good candidates. And it's like, if you want people to take bold stances as candidates, then you better step up and help them knock on doors and get the votes out, rather than just, being so quick to throw rocks at them from the sidelines. That's easy, but you got to put some skin in the game. And I think that that's something that everybody, after the campaign, has to kind of look at. I mean, I know I am 2 months after, I'm still like soul searching and like really trying to pick up the broken pieces of what was the culmination of 10 years from the Occupy movement to the Bernie Sanders campaign, that, I felt vindicated. Like this is what the journey drove me towards. It was this beautiful intersection between that grassroots energy and electoral politics work. We tried the first, this is our first time for many of us engaging in this type of, in-depth, all hands on deck type of work. But there's, like you said, and both of y'all have been saying, there's so much work to be done on the local level. And so like, I kind of want to maybe just, kind of wrap it up in a way, and just, because there's a, I mean, I know you, Socrates, are going to be, doing things in the future. You've done stuff before, and like your stock rose.
I don't know.
Like, I'm not doing
Look, man, I'm in the woods right now. I'm literally in the woods.
Yeah. Well, after you're done, like, like staring off into the woods and like, thinking about
getting attacked by mosquitoes. Like, this is...
Yeah, no, but Brendan, I know that you're looking at a project, right, to be able to, because that's again, like, bottom up, how can we get progressive candidates to win on the local level? We failed recently. We failed a lot in Santana and other places. We win sometimes, but the Jose Morenos and Bernie Sanders, those are exceptions to the rule. Like they're a rare form. So we have to work with what we have, but at the same time, we need the tools available to us. So I know that you've been developing a tool to help do outreach, right?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it's I mean, I think we may be familiar with, like, in terms of like, if you've ever signed up on a list in the last few years with the campaign, you might end up getting a text message, and essentially that's the service that we are looking to enter into. We should be ready to go in about a week or so, but really what we want to do is provide an entry level that's a lot more easier for campaigns of all levels to be able to use this tool. Because with not a lot of volunteer effort, you are able to contact personalized, a massive amount of people. If you wanted, you could contact every single voter, in the district that you're looking to run for, given how many people you have with you. But like, even the candidate themselves could do this, and the way that it's set up right now is that, the cost can be prohibitive, even when it is just, I think some services are around 8 cents, some services are around 12 cents. And I remember on a congressional campaign that I was on, we, were like, we want to do this. I had it all set up. I've been looking into it. I'd seen my girlfriend texting for Bernie back in 2016. Like, I just was like, this is going to be like the biggest like thing that we can do. And on this race, we're like, all right, we pull our list, we estimate how much it's going to cost. And then the next thing that we do is we cut our list down so that we didn't talk to as many people, because we weren't sure about spending that much money on texting. And it's like, that to me, like, when I look back at that like experience, that to me is like the antithesis of what you should be doing when you're looking to, text out to voters looking to earn their support, or looking to get them engaged with the campaign. Now, obviously, still you have like your targeting, and you want to talk to, the people that you think may be likely to support you or likely to be moved to support you. But, by and large, by making the tool cheaper, you're able to do it more often. And by communicating more often, you're able to communicate more effectively, raise your profile as a candidate or as an organization, identify the people who are going to support you so you can continue like moving them along, in the campaign schedule, making sure that you're, notifying them about getting their ballot, turning it in, highlighting recent news that you have coming on, as it develops on the campaign, and also using it as a tool to fundraise, which is like a really huge way that the Bernie campaign themselves would raise money was by texting people after like major events, like after Bernie participated in a debate. I mean, everyone talks about Bernie's email list, but Bernie's text message list was also like incredibly important. And we would schedule our, recruitment for volunteers. It would be scheduled around that fundraising schedule because we had to make sure that the campaign could stay funded. So really, we're building this on the technology that was used in both the Bernie Sanders campaign and on the Elizabeth Warren campaign. It's on an open source platform called Spoke, but we're adding a couple additional developments to it that make it a little bit more user friendly, and I think are more geared and suited towards campaigns. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of going into this endeavor, is that myself and my partner Cole Edwards, he was the creator of the distributed program for Bernie 2020. He had been involved also in Bernie 2016. But we ourselves are not developers, but we're organizers, and we understand like intuitively how these tools can work, and we've used these tools. And so that was like what we saw. If you can use it, if it can be cheap, and if we can be there to provide kind of like guidance, and advice, we can help people get the most out of it, and win, which is what the end goal is when you run a campaign.
Oh yeah. We definitely need these kinds of tools. And I mean, running a campaign is hard enough. Like, oh man, there have been some times when we've had some local people just like try to run kind of maybe a bit too late, and it's so overwhelming going into it. So any tool that can help a small campaign win,
it's
a
like
great thing.
It's truly one of the hardest things to get into. I feel like and a lot of it has to do with uncertainty about I mean, what to do next. All right, I've announced my campaign. Like, it's almost, I feel like sometimes it's almost like, now what do I do? I mean, that guidance and help, it's like, it's so crucial, it's so necessary. And that's kind of like what I'm hoping I can provide to candidates, so that they can reach out to the voters if they need to, reach out to the volunteers that they need to, and be able to, use their limited time and resources most effectively.
Yeah. And maybe you can build in like a little dating extension there too. You can improve the user experience quite a lot there.
We can talk about that separately.
That's another idea for sure.
Socrates, what tool are you developing for the Joe Biden campaign?
Insect repellent. No, I'm not working for Biden. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not working on any tool.
Maybe just a hatchet to get out of this damn forest.
Yeah, right. One thing. I'm trying to work on chopping wood down to the basics. But I think back to I think the main takeaway here. Like, I think for people that this is their first like rodeo and that are really disappointed with how things turned out, like, think about Bernie. Like, what? Think about the courage it took to be Bernie Sanders for 40 years in the wilderness. No one, really appreciating what you're doing. This guy going to Congress for 30 years, and his peers basically laughing at him. No national coverage, and not backing down. Right, every time he would lose one of these battles, like spoke out against the 1994 crime bill. They passed it anyway. Spoke out against Iraq. They passed it anyway. Like, every one of those times, he could have just given up. He could have sold out. He could have quit, and he didn't. And I think there's something like very inspiring, very human about that like the fragility almost. It's very frail. Like, the humanity intrinsic in that defeat is what kept making him stronger and stronger and stronger, to the point where now people are like, oh, he's like a grumpy old man. Dude, he's weathered. He's been through a lot. He's like really learned to appreciate all the small victories along the way and learn from the defeats. And for these new organizers, people getting into politics, people just wanting to help their community, even on a very basic local level, like, you're going to come up against people that are more experienced than you. You're going to come up against people that are more funded. And all you can do is get better, learn more, grow, and stay involved. So I think that would be my main takeaway from the 2020 campaign. I certainly learned a lot of stuff. I know everyone I worked with learned so much, and I'm excited for everyone to kind of use those tools to keep the movement going.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And truly, there, like you both mentioned, there was just a lot of incredible individuals, organizers, and just staff members of across the country that are now have all these skills that they can hopefully impact their community in local council and in statewide races. That is really invaluable. Because it's like. We desperately need, as much as we need progressive candidates, we need staffers competent and able to really develop a winning strategy that can take people to the finish line. Because we can cry sour grapes for until the cows come home, but at the end of the day, we got to lick our wounds, take the L, and get better. And as you mentioned, Socrates, it's a long term. It's a marathon. It's not a race. We got to be in it for the long haul. If it is change we really want, because it definitely is not going to happen overnight. And well, of course, unless the zombie apocalypse happens, at which case then it's definitely going to happen. Which that could happen.
We're only a few plagues away. Biblical plagues.
Really?
Away.
We talk about this, killer hornets,
COVID-24.
Yeah.
Cannibal rats, and
watch out. Yeah, I think it's an Exodus what the third one will be. But I wouldn't go to the beach. I think it's a river of blood. So maybe beaches of blood.
Yeah, well, I want to thank both of y'all for being on the show tonight. It's really been insightful. Just a lot of good conversation, a lot of good thoughts, and I think these are the kind of conversations that Bernie crowds and progressive folks and need to have all over the country. Like how, not only like can we just look at the carcass of the Bernie campaign, but look at in the longer picture, like how can we engage, whether it's like joining the worker fight, whether it's joining like a progressive alliance, like you're mentioning up north with the woman from Richmond, the mayor,
Gail McLaughlin.
Gail McLaughlin, right? Supporting AOC and her upcoming fight. I for one, I'm not going to lift a damn finger for Biden. Like him and his billionaires and Obama can figure that shit out. Maybe they can, have a hopey, changey type of slogan that'll work for Biden. But in the absence of that, I for one, I'm very much focused on helping progressives as much as we can locally to get in and start the movement locally. So I don't know. Is that what you're going to do, Dylan? What are you going to do?
Oh boy. Yeah. I'm sure there's plenty we can do, but yeah, definitely. I'm waiting for a text, basically, I think, at this point.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all you need is to get it started, to be honest.
That's right.
Takes a text to feed a village. Wait. Okay. I'm really messing up my phrases tonight.
All right. Once again, thank you, Brandon Wiles and Socrates Cruz, former staffers with the Bernie Sanders campaign 2020. The fight continues. Hasta la victoria siempre. And we'll be catching up with y'all soon enough. I'm sure.
So you guys, thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
You.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Brandon. Come back, Socrates. We miss you.
Good luck out there in
I'll
the
be
woods.
back in the winter.
Yeah.
See you guys
next winter.
All right. Peace out.
Yeah.
Later.
Woohoo!
Ow!
Oh, how you doing, Dylan?
Doing good. Yeah.
All right. Our engineer told us to wrap it up, so we're gonna.
Yeah. Ouch. I think we went a little over. No. So you can talk more if you want now.
No, I'm done.
I mean, there's fewer cooks in the kitchen.
You missed
Perhaps.
Look.
Yeah, there you go. Fancy. Man, we got special effects. How are you doing that? Is that okay? It's magic, obviously.
Yeah. No. It was really great hearing from both of them.
Yeah.
Had a lot of good convo. I think it was great. It was everything I hoped it would be. So hopefully everybody that tuned in liked it. Please like, follow, share this video in your circles. And like I said, the conversation continues about what the future of the Bernie crap movement, the progressive movement, and just leftist politics as a whole. But no matter what, don't give up, never give in, as Pato Banton says.
Yes.
Because life is a struggle, but we can't give in.
The struggle continues,
Yeah.
regardless of who's president. And just remember when the Dream Defenders endorsed Bernie Sanders. Do you remember what their thing was? It was like that we are picking the political opponent that would be easiest to work with. I mean, honestly, that's how I feel about politics right now. And I mean, we need to pick some opponents that are good to work with. So.
Yeah, and we need to develop critical pedagogy. Allows us to understand truly the problem and understand what our role is, and really develop our communication skills to be able to have dialogue with each other, and not impose our ideas on others, but to develop the critical thinking and the political context necessary for folks to really get behind this movement. I think Bernie got as close as as anybody could in our lifetime, or as anybody has. Who knows what the future will hold. Maybe AOC will be able to take up that mantle and be that. But till then, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few.
Oh no.
Pick a cause, any cause. We don't need just one Bernie Sanders or one Dylan Thompson. We need hundreds and thousands of leaders, grassroots, working class heroes. As John Lennon said, a working class hero is something to be. Bernie now, revolution forever, and the continues.
And my final thought is that the question is, are Biden voters sub-oppressors? So I won't answer it, but you tell me. You tell me. Okay, that was a bit harsh. Okay, so I can do the outro.
Are Amazon buyers complicit for Jeff Bezos's destruction of our economy?
Oh no. Leftist guilt hypothetical questions. Yeah. Oh, everything I do. Have you seen Community?
No, I have to go. I have to see it. It's been popping up on my Netflix. So.
Okay.
Well, Sopranos. Hopefully, I can get rid of the mafia dreams and bring on the community dreams.
Yeah, bring on some happy community dreams, and just know that we are like Britta from that show, in that everything she analyzes, she sees the exploitation in it, and then everyone just tells her to shut up because she's such a buzzkill. But that's what it is being on the left. You see everything for what it is, and it's usually not very pretty. So I'm going to stop talking because I know Edgar is pretty mad. So I apologize for that.
I want to thank all of our folks that tuned in for the first time or tuned in again. We couldn't do this without you, truly. It would just be me and Dylan yelling at each other. We thank you. Please, again, tune in next week. We will have more of what's happening around Orange County and the world with a political, satirical twist. I want to thank audio video engineer Edgar Silva, Iron Lion Studios, Iron Lion Media. Holler at us if you want some help with recording your
services,
podcasts, and other
media services.
Yeah.
Professional services. Some nice equipment. Okay, go ahead. The end of our commercial.
And from Dylan Thompson and Jose Gloria and all of us, and it's Happenin family, we are signing off.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Oh, okay. Woo.
mientras que el burgués se aprovecha de tus labores. Hay que luchar para vencer este sistema.